Hi everyone, my name is Sam. I run the D&D Newbie Sessions community. Thanks for coming back for another podcast episode here. Today I talked with Mira and Storm from Westward, a story of the West Marches by the Legion of United Gamers. In this episode, we discuss their impressive in tabletop community, how it works, how it's structured, how they manage all of the players and DMs, and a whole bunch of other stuff. It's really fascinating. Highly recommend listening through. As usual, if you're looking for links or information, head over to the YouTube version of this podcast. You can find that under the D&D Newbie Sessions YouTube channel. If you can't find that, go to dndnewbies.com. It's in the top right. You can also find out more about their game on Roll20 under the title Westward, a story of the West Marches, if you're interested in just learning more and possibly even joining their community, joining the games there. Otherwise, let's dive right in. Okay, well, hi everyone. My name is Sam, and I'm here with Mira, who is from the United States but currently lives in Germany, and Storm, who is from the Netherlands. First off, thanks again for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your interest in having us.
Cool. So I reached out for this interview because Mira, I had saw that you mentioned on Twitter running, starting up and running this huge 90-person West Marches style campaign. You've got 15 DMs, and when I saw that, I was like, wow, that sounds daunting. That sounds like a big project. So I was really fascinated to learn more about that and understand how it's structured, how you keep it organized, all that sort of good stuff. So that's what we're going to be chatting about today. And I figured what we could start with here is maybe just how did it begin? What's the history kind of leading up to today? And then we can dive into how is it actually structured? How do you run it on a day-to-day basis, keep it organized and stuff like that?
Okay, so where the origins of the community and the game itself date back quite a ways, actually. I've been running tabletop games since I was very young. So about 20 years ago, I started my own D&D setting that was kind of based on the Mystara basic setting that was there. And I'll always give a shout out to basic D&D. It's underappreciated. So that's where it started, and went up through the editions. And I've always been an organizer for tabletop. I remember at one point I had this house we were renting, and we probably had, I think it was like 15 people playing Vampire the Masquerade, and each room was a different part of the city. So I had two DM assistants or storyteller assistants, and they would go through and make sure the rooms were flowing and the role play was going and stuff. So this is kind of like the progression from that. I've always wanted to put this stuff together. I've always pulled from groups and stuff, but it was always where I would go into communities for other things like Star Wars: The Old Republic or other games, and kind of pull players and be like, hey, you guys want to do this? And Roll20 came around, and like I've been on there since just after I think it got off Kickstarter or whatever. And so I've been doing most of my tabletop stuff online since about 2013, 2014, which has helped because I've moved around a lot. So cut ahead to about 2017. I had pulled together. I do a summer campaign almost every summer when I can, and I put together a summer campaign in 2017. We were going to run Dungeon World, and what wound up happening was a few people who were there flaked. And that's always the problem. I mean, they didn't mean to. Schedules, just that's how it happened. Yeah. So we had this game going, and people couldn't make it for whatever reason, and I got super frustrated. No no anger now, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But I was super frustrated. I even was like, I'm done with this, because this is like the second campaign in a row that people had kind of just flaked off of. Which, I mean, it's a silly thing to get mad about. But then again, you put work into prepping.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Several months prior, I had seen Matt Colville's video about West Marches,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a fantastic video. If you haven't seen it, it really goes into it. And I'd heard about West Marches before, but it never like struck me. And then I saw his video, and my initial reaction to the video was okay, that's great. That doesn't really sound like something I would do, which
Mm-hmm.
is it's fun in hindsight now.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I said, I don't remember where it came back to me, but I was just kind of idly watching through Matt's videos, just doing stuff in the background or whatever. And I caught this West Marches video again, and the idea hit me like, oh, I should do a West Marches game. I should bring these people in and just have it set where anybody could come in and do this, just like the West Marches thing. And the original concept actually was a Star Wars game.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing where, one of the big parts of West Marches is you have a central place everybody's got to go back to once they're done venturing, and that was going to be a ship, and it's going to be Rebels versus Empire, which eventually I have started up. We have the Star Wars game running with Star Wars D6
Oh, cool.
on the server. Yeah, love it. So it is kind of cool to see that come to fruition. But I was talking with some of the other people, and they were saying, well, I've got some people who want to play, but they're not really into Star Wars. They're more interested in D&D. So I actually took it and I was like, well, this is originally Dungeon World. So do you guys want to do Dungeon World or 5e? Because I'm a big fan of Dungeon World. And they were like, well, let's do a vote, 5e1. So that was it. So I just started then coming up with narrative reasons for why we have okay, what is the West that they're going into?
Mm-hmm.
Why are there ruins there? What's going on with this? Why do they have this city they come back to? And I just started building up. And I also, one of my storytelling styles is I like to kind of follow, I think it's J.J. Abrams says, like a mystery box. Like you have something that's there and people see it, and then you just open something, you pull it out and like show a little bit and a little bit and a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so like we established like that there were these mystical elements. Some cataclysm happened and just wiped this area of land that had a kingdoms there before, that I had ran campaigns in the past. And I'm going to turn my phone's volume down. That is annoying. Anyway, sorry.
That's okay.
Anyway, so we had this big cataclysm. Nobody knows where it came from. Nobody knows what happened. Refugees came, and the history of this 600 years ago, they found a city waiting for them. And in this city, there was a tower in the center, and they eventually got into the tower, and inside the tower there was beings that called themselves the Sages, and they identified the tower as the Tower of Elves, and everybody was like, whoa, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean?
Mm-hmm.
And the West itself, outside of the walls where this protective barrier was that the Sages had put up for the city, the land was in like well, it's still doing it. Anyway, the land is in like chaos. So that's how I actually worked it in, to explain inconsistencies when the parties set out. So like if one day a party sets out and they're like, yeah, we're going to go to the Whispering Woods to the south, and they wind up like going about the same direction and all this, and one member of that party had been in there before and something's different, it's because the land is in a state of magical flux. And that's just my way of like, because maybe I mistaken a note that there was a big tower there or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we started off with 8 people. After a few weeks, some other people started joining. It was just friends of friends at that point. So it was like, oh, I know this guy, I know this lady, she wants to join, that kind of thing. And that we started to grow a little bit. I think we got up to maybe 15, 16 people. And that's when I asked one of my oldest friends, two of my oldest friends actually, one after the other, if they wanted a DM. And just to give them a little shout out here, Goat, who is still very active as one of our head admin people, who's been there since before the beginning, and Callio, who is kind of in the shadows. He's the mysterious guy, but he's an amazing friend, and he supports the server like so much. And he's not active at all, but when he's needed, we just put up the Callio signal and they're out.
That's awesome.
So it was founded by some people who just love the game, and there were some new people coming in who had never ever played tabletop ever. They had heard of it, they had seen it. I think one person I'll give another shout out to, who's still with us and still kicking a lot of ass on the admin side. His name is Big Whoop. He came in as a player. He started off with this stuff, and he had never played before. And if there's one thing I like to say about myself is that I'm a very noob friendly DM. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've run it with so many different people that one of the things I like to do is to get new people in, because there's always this moment with new people, and I loved seeing it with Whoop, where they hit this spark, and like that they're a fan, and they're gonna be playing this, and they're probably gonna DM stuff later,
Yeah.
So so like cut a little bit ahead. This was September. Our birthday for the server is September 9th, so we just kind of just had our third birthday, our anniversary, whatever you want to call it. And so cut ahead to December, and I was talking to the people who were there and active, and I was like, at this time we had like maybe 10 channels in our Discord where we could do all this stuff. And it was just the three of us, I think, 3 or 4 of us DMing. Which, to compare to today, I think the Discord server has over 200 channels, maybe 250. So it's grown quite significantly.
Cool.
So in December, we decided to make a big posting on the Roll20 looking for group page, and just see like who we would get. And we posted up a bunch of stuff. I like to signpost this stuff, like if you are an asshole, don't apply, that kind of stuff, because it's like I follow Whedon's law of don't be a dick, and that is our number one rule in our server. Like when you see our stuff, that is a thing. And we also posted about LGBTQA plus inclusivity, and just basically like we are a diverse international community of people from all over the place, of many different experiences and backgrounds. And if you're going to come in here with any bit of hate on your heart, this is not the place for you. We're going to root you out really quick. So recruitment started. We got some great people, and we've had great people in. I think I can count on maybe just my hands the number of people we've had trouble with, and I know I can count on less than one hand the number of people that we've had like just outright we had to kick these people. Like so I mean, and for an online community that's doing recruitment like that, either the signposts are working or we're very lucky. So either way, to have like the volume of people we've had come through the door and sometimes leave, I think it's insanely lucky that we've had such a good like group that we have.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel with my community as well. Like a lot of new faces have come through, and we've barely had any issues. So I think it's just that people. Hopefully that just means that most people are just really nice and cool.
Yeah, that's what I think. Like, I earnestly do believe that in the tabletop community, because of its background with, like, I know, 20 years ago when I was in high school, like, I got the shit bullied out of me and stuff. So it made me really compassionate. My friend group were a lot of compassionate people. And then we kind of spread this around a little bit, to where people were just interested. I mean, I'm from Georgia in the U.S., like in a small little town,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just incredible. Like some of these, like what people you would not guess it from, like these like redneck good old boys would come in and just be interested with this stuff, and they would
Hmm.
click, and then they'd become really good friends with everybody at the table, and you'd get this diversity going, and you'd kind of see them soften up. I've had some people that I considered bullies in school come out after this and join these games, and then kind of find like their center and stuff, and maybe work through some problems that were causing them to be like that,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
these things are rooted. No one's a bad person from the start. That's
Yeah.
my philosophy anyway.
Yeah,
um
D&D, like, or just tabletop in general, seems like it has the possibility of being kind of a great unifier because it's just
yes.
a bunch of people coming together, differences aside, they team
Yep.
up and they solve problems and they generally have a really fun time and just,
and
yeah.
and the thing I love the most about it is, and the thing that I like seeing in this community too, before I move on to like how we actually run the games and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
is um, that I one of my personal philosophical like things, my own ethos is that every single person has a story inside of them, fiction or nonfiction, and D&D is a way for us to get together and tell a story together. There's no other medium that does it like D&D does it. That does it like tabletop does it. And you can do this anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
I've had my father was in law enforcement, and he would talk about that prisoners at his jail that he was the administrator for, they would find ways to play this game together. Like that's how much this stuff like means to people as a social like connection, and you're getting this out, and maybe you're just there to roll some dice and kill some stuff, but you're still engaging in this fiction, and you're still in a way, even if all you're doing is I swing my sword. There's got to be a big brute swinging a sword in a story, and there you go. It's your place.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, moving on. Yeah, just that's we started recruitment, and that's kind of like been our model since, is just recruiting off the LFG forums. Occasionally, I'll pull people in off of other sites and stuff when I see them talking about it, and I've posted up to Reddit, but it always routes back to that.
Mm-hmm.
So, as far as how the game goes, um, basically, um, one of the core parts of it being a West Marches game is that the players put together the sessions. It's the reversal. Like usually, it's the DM is like, "Hey, I got this game I want to run. Oh, we're gonna do this."
Mm-hmm.
In this model, um, and this is how it's been set up since the start. I set up a thing where players group together and they talk amongst themselves until they come up with a handful of things. It's like a who, what, where, when, how.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's always like who's going to play and what characters are they bringing. What do they want to do? When can they do it? And this is the big important one, because you want to put a date and a time on it. And usually,
Mm-hmm.
usually we're about like 7 p.m. Berlin time. Back in that back in the early days, it was almost always Thursdays for some reason. Everybody just synced up on a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, and then so what do you want to do? And the goals could be anything. This is what the hook for the DM was: is the goal could be, we're going to explore the Whispering Woods, and that's it. And then the
Mm-hmm.
DM can just build off of that. And
Yeah.
to the DMs, my personal way of storytelling and DMing. So my motto, and you can ask anybody on the server, is uh, my statement is usually like when something's like too much, is I always say that sounds like prep. I don't do prep. I do
Mm-hmm.
improv. So what I would always do is I would take these goals and I'd run through random generators, and then let the generators let me like react to the generators and tell a story from the generators.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some crazy good stuff come from that. Like one of our long running antagonists, who became like a super ally in the narrative, was a randomly generated red dragonborn in a dungeon, and all it said about him was he looks confused as if he hit his head. And so that guy became this like reoccurring figure in the ongoing story. And then his father came, who is this very powerful being, and he's kind of this ongoing figure. And it's like that's the kind of stuff I like to see, because that's
Yeah.
how it's like a surprise for me. But on the other side of the coin is if a DM wanted to develop everything about like, oh, they're going to the Whispering Woods. Okay, so first they're going to do this, and do it more traditionally. That's totally the option. And
Okay.
then, so basically, the players make their group. They put up a session call, is what we call it, that has all this information, and then a DM responds and says, "Hey, we can do this," and then the sessions go basically. Sometimes sessions don't get picked up, but I think we've had more sessions than days this year. So,
Wow.
yeah, we've had almost, I think it's at least one a day on average. Not every day, but sometimes 2 or 3 a day. So,
Wow. Very
yeah,
cool.
it's incredible to see. I'll see the people in the chat and be like, "Good Lord, what have I done?" But yeah, so from there the DM does that, and then very simply afterwards, the DM then writes in a debrief channel for the other DMs to see what happened and what the story is. So if and the notes are collected, and it just says, "Hey, I ran this," and usually the players will put in a note about the quest. And we use this other site called, how do you pronounce it, Storm?
I think it's Conca.
Conca, yeah. It's a really cool site. The quest tracking site. I think it's developed by one guy, and we've actually asked him for stuff, and he's been like, "Yeah, sure," and he's coded it in, so that's really
Wow.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so the players, again, like a lot of this ethos is player driven. So we're like, hey, if you want to talk about quests, here, do this, put this quest stuff in, and you guys can organize based on these quest lines. And so it works like that too, like where the DMs can make their own quest lines and stuff, and it's pretty narrative free in that, while also all these things are building up as well. So we got the sessions. That was how we do the sessions, how they're debriefed. DMs talk to other DMs. That rolls through. In the downtime, we have role play channels. We have probably 20 or 30 role play channels that people can text role play in. And we even have like role play rules, so people can do maybe not like life-threatening combat stuff, but just stuff to kind of like, make sure that there's some rule set there if a DM's not hovering the channel or something.
Yeah.
And we're able to tell a lot of stories there, and through that we carry on, and we try and do this every year. We try and carry on a large overarching narrative that builds and culminates around the anniversary into we use an MMO term for it. It's a raid, but it very much is like that's how it's structured. For example, our first year through, we did the story was set up again. It was a random roll. There was this dragon, and in my setting, there's regular dragons, but some players were I had a player group react to a dragon one time and go, "Oh, it's just a dragon." And I said, nobody should ever react to a dragon by saying, "Oh, it's just a dragon." So I invented a whole new kind of dragons called worms. I mean, I know the name is consistent with D&D naming, but I delineated like worms are a different thing, and these are like uber dragons.
Okay.
So like they're just these godly beings. And so basically there was like a random roll, and a dragon got rolled, and I was like, I'm going to make it a worm. And then I was like, what can we do with this worm? Because worms, according to this narrative, aren't supposed to be in the West because the magic's all chaotic. So that's going to be the bad guy for our narrative. And we just build it up from there, and build it up and build it up and build it up. Not every session had a hint towards it or anything. There was a lot of sessions that didn't, but there was always this pending doom where, okay, so like armies from the East came to help fight this thing, and then it culminated in just an absolutely amazing MMO style with bosses, phases, with like 30 player characters running through this stuff to kind of go through and have this huge knockdown, drag out fight with this worm and its minions. And again, I'm going to give a shout out to Big Whoop for running the whole damn thing. And him and Sarnai, who's another longtime member, she's such a peach. She pretty much designed, I think, at least half the stuff, the mechanics for the bosses to go through, and just it was just really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's pretty much our model for everything. So the sessions run like that, and then following, we have like a little rest period after the big raid where the narrative goes through, and then we start building up the next narrative, and then that's our model for a cycle. We're actually preparing for a raid coming up pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
It started yesterday. Actually, we had the first session yesterday.
yeah. So it started. Yeah, so it's going on now.
Cool.
Which is, yeah, I'm eager to see how that stuff turns out. Though I will say I've been a little busy with other stuff, so I haven't really been watching the narrative on that. But Storm knows, so I always trust Storm to give me the information.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of Storm, I want to turn it over to him so he can kind of talk about the administration side and how we manage this day to day and what our like structures are, because like
Yeah.
if anybody knows it in this community, it's him. This guy is the head admin of the head admins. So anyway, yeah,
Cool.
so I'll just turn it over to Storm.
Thanks. So in our server, we work with what we call a chain of escalation to treat problems or things that happen as they occur with the urgency they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And how we've done that is we have what we call the player representatives. That's like the lowest form of any form of admin, which are only players, but they're chosen by other players who they think would represent them well,
Mm-hmm.
who they can go to with problems or suggestions or stuff like that. And the player reps amongst themselves can discuss whether this is something they should bring to the admins or no, or that they can shoot down immediately or give immediate feedback to. So that's where a lot of stuff already gets caught without any admin even interfering,
Mm-hmm.
which keeps us sane because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Then if we do feel, or if they do feel that they need to escalate it to admins, then we have what we call the roundtable, which is a shared channel for both the player reps and the admins, where we can discuss things. They can bring things to us, and we'll talk about it for a bit. And if we feel the need to like talk about it with only admins, we have our own channel, admin only channel, that we can discuss it in more detail and like compare stuff and eventually reach a verdict, which is almost always done democratically.
Okay.
Because we have 11 admins, the majority of them also a DM, not everyone also a DM.
Mm-hmm.
And we, if we make a decision, we bring it back to the player reps, and the player reps can then bring it back to the players who brought it to them. Or we just, if it's like a thing that affects a lot of people, we have a server news channel in which we can like ping everyone and say like, hey, this and this was brought to our attention and we discussed it and we decided this and this and this, to be as transparent as possible.
Cool.
But yeah, that's like a bit of the chain of escalation. So we have player reps chosen by the community, and then we have the DMs and the admins, and then we have like me, Mira, and Goat all the way at the top to make any form of like tie break if we need to.
Okay.
But that's rarely ever relevant, because on like 95% of the stuff we all agree, which is excellent.
Yeah, that's nice.
Let's see. That's we also have it's a more recent addition. We have like a player forum, as we call it, which is a place where It's basically admin by only the player reps, because sometimes when there's an admin present, people didn't feel comfortable saying certain stuff, or they kept holding problems they felt or suggestions they felt stupid saying. They kept it to themselves, so we created that channel, and no admin has access to it, only the player reps. So people can say whatever they want without having to fear basically someone of any sort of authority thinking something about it. And they can discuss it among only players, and the player reps will act as admins in that channel. And if they feel like, hey, this is something we need to talk about or we need to bring to the admins, then they'll bring it to us again, and then we have the proper chain of escalation again where we talk about it. So yeah, that's basically how we run all the suggestion. We also have a suggestion box, actually, which is anonymous. It's a third-party website that I do not know the link to currently, but people can anonymously post feedback there or suggestions there. It's also monitored by the player reps, so they can decide what's worth bringing to the admins and what isn't. So we can have a lot of player input, because, like Mira said, player-driven is the name of the game. So that's, I think, in a nutshell, how we run the administration part of it. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you mentioned that are you running most of these games through Roll20? Is that where it's happening?
Yes, we're running all games on Roll20. The text-based RP is done on Discord, which is done to further elaborate on the plot they encountered in a Roll20 session, or sometimes it's used as a lead-up to a Roll20 session. But all the 95% of the sessions, even more so, is done on Roll20.
Okay, and the games are formed. Mira, you sent me a couple screenshots actually of kind of like the format that people follow for like suggesting games and things. That's all in Discord.
Yeah, all of it is in Discord. That's where the whole community started and where everything's organized. We find it. It has its advantages and disadvantages, but I think we've adapted to the disadvantages of it pretty well. So all of that's organized there. You can find any kind of our hot off the press rules changes, stuff like that, balancing, or any kind of announcements will be there. In addition to that, we also have the Kanka website, which is more for lore and player character tracking, NPC tracking, just basically setting stuff. But it does help to keep that organized kind of in a place that's more of a wiki style reference almost. I don't want to say wiki, but it's like that. And then in addition to having all the rules listed on the Discord, we also have I think it's around 45 pages long handbook that I developed to kind of get everybody started.
Cool.
So
yeah.
It's a good. Yeah, I think I sent it to you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. And it's just a reference manual for everything from what the setting is, who we are, where the communities come from, what the rules are, how to do this and that and that. And it's basically to like be your first stop. And then if you're having trouble parsing it, we have other programs like our mentoring program for new players and stuff. So
yeah, I looked through that handbook. It looks awesome. A lot of work clearly went into it. How did you? I was actually curious. How did you put that together? Did you use the only thing I've seen so far is GM Binder for putting together kind of those types of things? Did you use something like that?
So there's a website for academic papers called Overleaf, I think it is.
Okay.
And I'll have to look that up. It's basically somebody had made a template for the D&D look and for Overleaf, and I was like, oh, cool. So I just learned. I think I can't remember the name of the language it's in.
Was it
like
Markdown or something?
it's like latex or something. I don't
Oh, okay.
remember. Yeah. So I read a primer on that and learned it real quick and started putting, words to page and figuring out like how to best make it look appealing and be readable and like kind of the process somebody would go through like step by step of what's this, and then seeing it. And we do an update for that. I think we try and do it every 6 or 7 months or whenever it comes up that it needs a big update. I think the last update was in February.
February, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. So we update it, but like it's never like super out of date because if something's big happens, we update it quickly. But like I said, the sharp part of the edge is always Discord to find the rules changes and rebalancings and stuff like that.
Cool. For example, if we were to put out a ruling about certain, for example, in 5e, Eldritch Invocations being like nerfed a little bit because it was observed that in our setting they were problematic, then something like that might eventually be added to the handbook. But like as soon as we make the verdict that it's like too problematic and we discussed with the player reps to get like player feedback on it as well, as soon as we like made a decision and we put it live, there's also like a ping to everyone going like, hey, in this information channel that's only really used for that, there will be a new post. So every time you can see like that certain channel highlighted, something important just went down. And it's usually paired with like a post on server news like, hey, we just had our patch notes go live, you can find them here and here. And then in the channel it details what we all looked into.
Okay. And those things are sort of like, is it correct to say that those are kind of like community-wide house rules, essentially? Like you've agreed on some sort of thing and then apply it to the entire community?
So, Storm, do you want to go into a bit of detail about how the patching, to use an MMO term again, the patching process goes?
Sure. The patching process is a relatively new process that we streamlined not too long ago. We see it ourselves, or it gets brought to our attention through either public channels or PM or the player reps coming to us with it, like, hey, in this session now there's this player that has this and this combination or this and this ability, and it's like it's basically too good, or it's too strong, or too powerful, or whatever. And they bring it to our attention, and we bring it to the admin channel, and we discuss it, and we decide on how to tackle that problem. First of all, we decide if it's actually a problem, and then secondly, if it is a problem, we decide how do we deal with said problem. And we'll have a bit of discussion, and eventually, after we've had the initial discussion, we move it to Trello, where we basically have a board of things that we need looking into, things that are being discussed, things we have changed, so we have a backlog, things we need to do, and it gets posted up there, and the discussion will continue there, and eventually, if we feel it's been discussed enough, we'll have a vote there, like I said earlier. And when we have like the majority vote, we'll have the majority vote, and we'll send it to the player reps, because they are the representatives of the community, and we're like, hey, this and this got brought to our attention, and this is how we feel we should deal with it. What do you guys think? And then we'll talk with the 5 player reps about it for a bit. They give us feedback, or they'll give us the okay. If they give us feedback, we'll like go back to the drawing board a bit and discuss it further and adjust where they say they feel it needs adjusting, or we in the end come back to them and feel like we're not going to adjust, or we don't feel we need to adjust because of this and this reason. And eventually the player reps give the A-OK for, we support this change, basically.
Okay.
And the new part then is that before we immediately put it live, is that we'll basically give the entire server a heads up, like, hey, this and this is brought to our attention. This is how the admins and the player reps agreed on changing it. And then we basically send the version out of how we are going to do the change. And then we basically have an open door policy, both us and the player reps, where players can come to us with any kind of questions or concerns or whatever regarding that issue. And if they get brought to us, we can discuss them again and alter it again a little bit. So that in the end, the change we made is either supported by the player community or they understand why we're making it. But that it doesn't come out of the blue anymore, and that people feel targeted or attacked, or like, hey, I wanted to do that, or hey, that's my thing they're tackling, and now I feel...
Yeah, that was a problem in the past, where we would make these changes and we discuss them in earnest. But it's, if you've ever heard an Overwatch player, especially someone who plays Mercy, talk about an Overwatch patch, they'll always be like, how are they ruining Mercy again? And that's kind of how some people were feeling. So we shifted our model over to being as transparent as possible, so people knew that we were doing our due diligence, and people knew that we were putting the effort in to make sure that while we understand that we're not going to make everybody happy with every change, but the impact is less aggro causing.
Yeah.
In the end, the changes are always made so that the entire community can have as much fun as possible. Like if you have one person using a broken combination, and usually our party or our game parties are 6 people. If you have one person using a broken combination, then the other 5 will feel underwhelmed, and they'll have less fun because of it, because they feel like whatever I do, it's not going to be as good as what that guy's doing.
Yeah. And that does include, in that thought process, when Storm says everybody who's playing the game in the community, that includes the people running the games, because as a DM, if you're up against a broken thing, then that can be pretty daunting to be like, okay, how do I balance for this when it's just so overpowered?
Yeah.
But I know some people in the past have gotten the impression that we've done malicious balancing stuff, targeted balancing stuff. But I think the two things that we always come from with this balancing, we don't do the first one as much as the second one, but the first one we would always balance based off of was narrative and lore stuff, because I've got some setting stuff that resurrection works completely different in my setting than in a normal one, and it lends itself to the game we're playing, because death needs to have meaning, and after a certain level in D&D, resurrection's pretty much just a cakewalk. So that's completely reworked to have basically a time limit on it, so to make it harder and stuff. And I personally think it's cooler, because if you do want to resurrect someone, you get to quest into the afterlife and find their soul in the umbral planes and bring it back. But some people don't like that. So but yeah, that's kind of where we're coming from on this, is what makes sense in what we're doing, and that is kind of a challenge we're up against with Dungeons and Dragons itself, because it's not built for this so much. It's kind of built so that you're playing a superhero by level 20, and it's just perfectly valid, but it's just for us, that's kind of against what the game's about, because there's so many player characters, and we want them to rise to this level of prestige on their own merits, not just because level 20 that they're a cleric and they can talk directly to their deity, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where it comes from. And then the second way is always, of course, the fun of the server and the balance of the server.
Cool.
There was one more thing I wanted to quickly touch on, because Mira mentioned it briefly, which is the mentoring program. Because as you said, the handbook's 45 pages and it can be very daunting and intimidating. Even though there's a lot of stuff in there, you need to know where to find it. So about, I think over a year and a half ago maybe, we realized that a lot of people were still having issues with this, and we started a mentoring program, which is basically some volunteers from the server, basically being a mentor to new people, so that whenever someone new joins and they've introduced themselves on the server, so we can give them the appropriate tags and they can see all the channels. There will be a talk in the mentor channel, and they will discuss amongst themselves, like, hey, who has time and who has few mentees? Who's going to guide this new person if they have any questions? So they have the handbook, the new players, to find the stuff they're looking for and how to do everything and to set everything up. But if that's not enough, they have one like dedicated person to ask questions to, who's all mentors we have currently have been here for quite a while. They're very, very knowledgeable on like this server and the goings on and stuff like that. So they have someone who knows their stuff that they can go to. And because the mentor always messages them first, being like, hey, I'm your mentor, if you have any questions, let me know. The bar is a lot lower. It feels a lot less intimidating, we've got from feedback, which is what we strive for, because we want new people to get started quickly and to join us in this grand adventure that we're running, and to become that new hero and rise to the top, like Mira just said. And I think the mentor program is a really good addition to that, to guide new players must they need it.
Yeah, I could see that being a really nice way, where, because like if people just post into like general chat or something, it's like they're asking a question to all of these people, and it's sort of intimidating, right?
Yeah, we had a early on. If you read the handbook, you'll probably see in big bold letters, "Do not PM Mira for any reason." And it's not because I'm like unapproachable or anything like that, but it very much goes back to the early days of the server, when people would join and like immediately PM me or do a ping in the general towards me or one of the DMs or the sages or well, the admins or whatever. And like, so we started like signposting that everywhere. And then eventually, it came to like, what's the better way to kind of address people having these questions and getting them resolved and just feeling welcome. Like, that's the biggest thing to me is when you're running a community that like says, hey, we don't care if you're new or not. Well, we actually do want to care if you're new, but care in the way that's not exclusionary, care in the way that like we care that you have an easy time adapting to this. You have an easy time, if you know, because there is a big thing. If this is you going, I want to dip my toes into D&D. Oh, look, there's a community. Oh, that community looks nice. What do we do? You know, where you do it and you jump in there and then you see this 45-page freaking book and you see all these Discord channels and all this stuff. And it's like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Am I going to post in the wrong place? But then you have somebody who is assigned to you, voluntarily, assigned to you, coming there and going, hey, if there's anything you need, here, I'm reaching out, friendly face, let me get you through. And I've heard so much good feedback from people who were saying like, oh, well, this person was my mentor, so of course I did well. That kind of like pride in how they were brought up in the server. And like, we've seen people go from timid newbies who have had very like scattered experience, or maybe their last game was 20 years ago, and they're just getting back into it, and they've taken from this mentor system, and they've said this, and now they're running games. They've become our DMs, some, I think, maybe even sages and stuff. Like, this is like this kind of progression that is really nice to see, because I think that's all some people need sometime, is a little guide. And yeah, so yeah, we care if you're new, and it's a big heart. That's we care.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how do you exactly do the matching from the mentor to the mentee? Because in my server, I do have a fair amount of people kind of joining on a daily, weekly basis, and I don't necessarily know exactly who they are. They're just people interested in running newbie games, or playing in newbie games. And I guess I'm trying to imagine how that might work for someone like me. How would I be pairing them up? You know?
So I think this goes back, and I'm gonna let Storm cut in on this too, because he actually knows like the more practical bits of this application. But like I think what goes in the intention is we have a very curated application process. When you put it in, it just gives some general stuff like your Discord name, your pronouns, tell us a little bit about yourself, give us a 2 sentence character concept. Here, did you read the rules? This kind of like basic stuff. Unless someone is throwing up an insanely red, I mean like deep crimson blood red flag, we have a clause in there that we tell everybody they have a 3-week probationary period that we can, say, hey, you're not a fit, but I think we've only had to use that like one time.
Yeah.
So because I mean 9 times out of 10, if somebody gets in there and they know they're not a fit, they're just going to leave, and that's fine. We don't hold any gripes about anybody. We do say like if you do get in there and you want to leave, let us know, and so you can come back. Like that's kind of our thing. So we know kind of like what's going on. But
we know who's coming in because the application that they send to Laura. Shout out to Laura.
Big shout out to Laura.
She gets the applications that they send to her via Roll20, and she screen caps the application and she sends it to a channel that the admins and the mentors have access to. So we know what's going to come in eventually. And then when they introduce themselves, like I said, one of the mentors will go like, hey, I'm currently free, or I have time. This person that I already know what their character is going to be like and what they think and who they are, the mentors will basically say, I'll take this person to the other mentors, and then they'll shoot the new person a message. We also have it's not a hard rule, but we just started with it, we followed it through. If a woman were to join, and we knew it's a woman from the beginning because it's such a male-heavy community, we currently have 2 male and 2 female mentors. One of the 2 female mentors will always take the woman to be like, hey, to make it less intimidating again in such a male-heavy environment, and we feel it's worked out really well.
And that also applies to if we notice something about when somebody says like, when we in our tell us about yourself stuff, if somebody is putting in, or other pronouns too, if they're identifying non-binary or something like that, or if they mention LGBTQA plus stuff, and one of our mentors like who might want to put that in there, like and because of comfort reasons or whatever, like that's basically like what the application exists for more than anything, is so that we know kind of like how to pair. Originally it was kind of just another filter, like is someone going to fill this out, that kind of thing. But it has become and adapted to with the mentors so that they can look at this stuff and see a person that they know that they can resonate with quickly, and be like, okay, well, I have this and I get this and I'm going to go with this, and this person, like, I'll pick them up. And it's a very quick process. And again, like Storm said it, and I will stress it again, these are players who have volunteered because of they've been here a bit and they want to help out, and it's just amazing. And again, like, yeah, it's just a really cool thing to see these players helping players and getting people in like that.
Cool. So it sounds like you have a very robust, well thought out structure to your community. Does that, all of that thought and that effort that you put in to build this, has that been like a huge piece of just kind of the success of your community, is having all this clearly defined process and documentation and stuff like that?
So it's I would like to think and hope I like to put up. I like to write SOPs for just about anything, so it just helps me keep organized. I am a very neurodiverse person. My biggest quality is probably ADHD, and that is something that I live with. So whenever I organize this stuff, um, and I go through these channels, I have a very like set thing, and here's all the information, and here's it in a flow. And doing this stuff to me helps me kind of work out like any like kinks and stuff. So when it was coming through with this, I very quickly like set up, not quickly, but very thoroughly in a pretty fast amount of time, put together stuff to prepare for the first game, and then we've just kind of built from that. Now, as far as the success goes, I think that having this organization has allowed for new people to move up to admin ranks and stuff like that and be on strictly the same page in almost every instance. And when they haven't been, that's a place for us to adapt our bureaucracy and stuff to better fit that. But I would say, without hesitation, if there's any one element that has been the success of this community, it's been the people and the passion that they've put into it, like absolutely. So I would like to say that they've taken these tools that I and other people have conceptualized, developed, or created, and have made the best of it with it. They might not have come up with the mentoring program, they might just be a mentor, but maybe they've suggested something and it's sparked, or maybe it's a player who had an idea and it worked up through our chain, and maybe the idea wasn't perfect, but because it worked through, you know, two layers before it got to us, it was able to be perfected. And now we've got stuff in there. There's a good number of things in our community, in our game, that have come from people's like players' feedback. I think one of the cooler ones we have are these fireside RP scenes that are like little downtime moments during sessions where players can initiate RP to kind of like fulfill that if they want to. And I believe, in Storm, you can correct me on this because this is after I kind of stepped away from running those sessions, but it was like you get inspiration for doing that. And
Yep.
yeah. And so it's this really nice like thing. And that totally came from somebody who said, hey, you know, why don't we do this? And it just kind of worked out from there. And it's like, that's something that I hope that all these things like encourage, like the player forum and stuff like that, is it encourages people to unabashedly speak these ideas. Because, like, you know, maybe if 9 out of 10 ideas are terrible and they just stop right there, there's still one good idea that's coming through, and that enriches the community. So yeah, I think that the success is we have the tools, and I think the success is that people have used these tools correctly, because otherwise, I mean, you take all these processes we have, and legitimately it could be a bureaucratic nightmare. Like if it's not moderated, if it's not watched, that's why there's so many different layers of admins and stuff, or people involved in that process. There's so like you've got people like the head sages who we pretty much stay out of most discussions, and I know I do. And we let the sages discuss it and stuff. And if it needs moderation, like that's when we step in as kind of unbiased, you know, on the side. Because our whole like role for us, the purpose of us is what I call protecting the core ethos, so that the core of the game, like the things that make this game Westward, a story of the West Marches, and not just some other D&D game, those stay true. So yeah, in answer to your question, to say it probably the third time, it's definitely like there's the tools, and it's how the people have used them. It makes it successful, I think.
A lot of very dedicated people. Yeah.
Okay, cool. let's see. I think just a couple more questions here. So you mentioned you have this overarching story, and it sort of culminates. It sounds like in this raid event. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was just gonna ask, yeah, like what is that? Can you talk a little bit more just about what that raid event is like? Is it one really big event where there's all these people, or is it like different groups, but it's one event, but different groups with different DMs all kind of running together?
It's more the latter than the former. So, how it's structured out, I can say how the first one was because I was very heavily involved in the structure of it. Just watching as like Whoopensar and I put this together, but I believe it was like 4 or 5 sessions, and it was basically, and I think this is how the raids have kind of stuck together. So it was basically like the initial push was all these armies were going against the Emerald Wing, the worm, and they were the distraction because she's got like godlike powers. So the PCs were coming up the rear to get rid of her minions and then take down her base of power. So what that ended up breaking into was there was 1 or 2 sessions that were, I think it was just one big session where they were pushing through, and this was like all the player characters, and I think it was people running multiple characters in smaller party groups. So they would basically the parties would have their initiative based on their group, and they would kind of track that way instead of doing it in the more contemporary everybody gets an initiative roll, because good god, that would be crazy. So it's like 30 player characters ran by maybe 15 to 20 players, and we kind of it was allowed to go in, like levels didn't really matter because it was kind of keyed around the parties. So everything would like scale. I believe it was Whoop could tell better, but I don't. Yeah, so that's how I said it should go. So maybe maybe it did. I'm pretty sure it did. So it would scale around like their encounters, like they would be taking on this while the higher guys would be pushing ahead. And I think there was a big shared boss to get into the place. And then as they got in, there was another session where everybody split up, and there was actually not just another session, there was 4 sessions for 4 towers. And those smaller parties, and this is based strictly on level, so they would go through based on level, and they would go up their tower to deal with whatever MacGuffin thing crystal they had to destroy. And they would fight their own boss. And then there was another session where everybody came back together to fight this last tower boss. And then there was one like last big session where it was kind of more of a narrative thing. It was kind of just the ending where the Emerald Wing was defeated, and that was like the big fireworks and celebration and narrative setup for what we've got going on right now. Is the big narrative thing that I is not going to culminate this year, is not going to culminate next year, but if we're still around, it'll be for our 5-year thing. Is my longtime running villain, which is an adaptation of Nerul, the god of death. So like in the future, like we've even set it up there at the end of that raid, like he's kind of this looming threat that's always there. So again, like we've got narratives on narratives and stuff. So that's kind of how that structure works out, and that's not anything set in stone. So we have rating planning channels where the DMs and admins who are involved in constructing this stuff can just basically say like, what are we going to do and how are we going to plan this out? And yeah, and basically like that's how that works out, and it's always got a narrative reason on why and where like we're coming from to do these sessions. So yeah, that's basically it. Storm, if you got anything you want to add in there.
No, I think you covered most of it. It's like it's a once-a-year event that we do around the anniversary, with like a lot of planning involved, and the next few weeks will be dedicated to that event and only that event. Like all other session goals have been halted because that's the current threat to the story and to the cities and to the encampments, so that needs to be dealt with.
And it's a note to the planning for the raid starts 6 months before the raid so that we can
Wow.
start talking about. We might not be talking about it every day,
Mhm.
but basically, whoever's kind of like the head honcho of the raid that year goes, "This is what the plan is, and this is what we're going to do," and we go, "Okay, let's think about this and develop from that."
Wow, cool. Let's see here. Oh, okay, and then one last other thing, something that I just saw in the handbook that I was curious about was guilds. Can you talk a little bit about what the guilds are all about?
Guilds. I love the guilds. I'm going to turn that over to Storm again because I'll say how they were set up. So from the get go, I wanted to have player guilds. That's kind of like it's MMOE and it's kind of cheesy, but that's something I feel can make an impact. It brings people together, and it's a nice little friend group for the PCs and stuff. So we did establish, like, I think from day one, we had established that you could form a guild and work from there. So yeah, Storm, you go into the guild's management stuff, I guess. But yeah,
So guilds are player driven, player run. A city needs the idea behind the guilds is that a city needs to um, be able to provide. So everyone that gets back from the west, with whatever reward they have, 20% of it is taxed towards the city because otherwise the city can't keep existing.
Mhm.
And guilds work in that way. That guilds often, if you're a member of a guild, you pay less taxes, or you don't pay taxes to the city, but you pay taxes often less than you would to the guild instead.
Mhm.
And in turn, the guild has to pay taxes to the city. And like Mira said, guilds they often originate from like a few PCs that were in a couple sessions together, or they have the same belief or the same idea or something like that, and they can start up a guild. We've had one started, I think, 2 weeks ago. So we're currently up to 5 or 6. I think 6. And what guilds do is that, like Mira said, they allow for your PC, however new they may be, to like get to know other PCs and like be intertwined in their story a bit and get to know those people. And guilds are led by PCs, and guilds can basically do whatever they want. They can set whatever rules they want, as long as it's within their walls. A guild can tell their members that they won't be taxed at all, and that everything you find west you can keep, but the guild still needs to pay taxes to the city every month. So if they have another way to solve that, then that's on them. And we've had a few guilds, and usually, I think most of the basic like ideas a guild would have, or that people would come together to, like justice or the greater good or protecting people, those have all been formed. And usually, a new PC can see him or herself fit, or themselves fit within one of those guilds. So if you have a very righteous, holier than thou person who likes to be the shield for others, there's a guild for that. And if you're more like the between the lines, loose rules, gray area stuff, then there's a guild for that too. So yeah, it's basically an RP place for people to get together and also have a slight mechanical benefit through paying less taxes, or being able to use the equipment that other characters, probably stronger characters, no longer see use for, inherit items from them or take them from them to be stronger themselves. But mostly it's made because the character will have a more fleshed out story and more hooks that they can like hang on to.
Yeah,
so
and
it's not a sheet of paper, but it becomes like this visualized, conceptualized character that has a lot of depth to it. That's what we strive every PC to be. And some work better than others, and not every PC becomes that thing, but we've had a lot of like a lot of PCs have their hero moments and their character stories. Even in a setting like this, there can't be one hero. That's just not. It's not fair to
It's against the
everyone
ethos
else.
too.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it's just not feasible.
Yeah.
But in a lesser way, that that paladin with the giant sword doing the final blow and having its hero moment, or that cleric getting everyone back to full, or that bard turning the miss into a hit, which in turn turns the tide of battle. Those little things and the story behind it, and often the text RP that comes from it, that gives characters depth, and guilds aid in that.
And the guilds, like, that's something too, because that's to carry on from that, like, that's part of that depth too, because you might not be the paladin who delivers the final hit or whatever, but you could be the guild that has evacuated the city or something, and everybody remembers this guild like working together to evacuate people. I think another like smaller benefit too is like we let people kind of go and have these guild halls that they can kind of visualize themselves and stuff, and it has this nice armory where people can share loot in, and the players always have, or the characters always have a a place where they can, um they've got their beds there and they don't have to pay for upkeep, and they can role play about their guild hall. I think one guild hall, I think the first guild hall, that was kind of special, actually came from a clear dungeon that I ran. That was this like old mansion that this bard was making with all these tricks and traps and stuff. And so the players cleared it out, and they said this is going to be the guild hall for this guild. And so it had like that history there, and it had all these little tricks and traps and bells and whistles, and people had a visual idea of where everything was laid out, which I may or may not have totally ripped off the map from Ocarina of Time, the forest temple, but but yeah, and like that's the kind of stuff, like we want people to feel like they're leaving their mark. And one of the ways you can do that is with guilds, and one of the other ways you can do that is by setting up camps and cities across the West, as the West is being turned back and settled. And another way you can do that is by having people tell your tales of doing something epic or whatever. But I mean, that is the biggest thing, and that's something that guilds really help carry on. Is like you can establish a guild, and people will remember that guild, and they'll talk about that guild, and it's a nice like way to make your mark.
Very cool. All right, well, we've already done over an hour. I appreciate you for sticking through here and chatting about your organization and stuff.
No problem at all.
So yeah, thank you very much. Is there, tell people who are listening, like how could they join your community? What sort of links do you want to share? Do you have other shout outs, stuff like that?
So I'll send you the link to the looking for group thing. If people just look in the Roll20 looking for group tool, when we're up, we're not always recruiting for two reasons. Sometimes we want to kind of let our members simmer and see how they go, and the other time is I completely forget to renew the dates on it. So yeah, so that's my bookkeeping problem. But we're usually always recruiting. People can put in an application there. It's just Westward, a story of the West Marches. I'll give you the link so you can include it in whatever.
Sure.
And yeah, that's how people can join. Like I said, we are very new player friendly. We have people coming in who have never played the game, and the other advantage is you're not just joining for our West Marches D&D game. I run like 10 other side games I do in like television style seasons. So I do like 5 episodes of Star Wars, and then I do 5 episodes, 10 episodes of Vampire, and then I do a mini shot, like 3 episodes of Alien, or 10 episodes of Zombie World or something like that. And we also like, so that's open for people to join, and we also do member hosted stuff, because Roll20 is awesome enough to allow us to share GM rights. So I can make a game with my pro account, and this is an advantage of membership. If you want to run a game on Roll20 with our members, I can make you a game, give you GM rights, and you have access to my like pro level Roll20 stuff. So it's no
Cool.
adverts and it's got all the dynamic lighting and stuff. So, and people were doing that. I think some people were running this Darkest Dungeons hack for D&D 5e. They're doing that as a side game.
Yeah, there's currently Darker Dungeons being ran every week on a Friday, and there's a Pathfinder campaign that White runs every Tuesday.
Yeah, that's right. So we have a good variety of stuff there that people can come in, and we encourage people to set up, and like maybe some people who are they've been playing for a bit and they want to dip their toes into DMing, and we have this pool of people who are eager to play and ready to play and ready to go, and you can get a group from that, and that's so that's kind of the advantages of joining and stuff. I'm actually working on other ways to join, and if any of those come up, I'll let you know. Maybe like a central email box or a kind of a front page website, something that we can do with WordPress or something, just to just throw it out there and get like an email address, like, hey, toss the application this way, that kind of thing, to not necessarily disassociate it from Roll20, but yeah.
Cool. And then do you have any like social media that you want to share for yourselves if people wanted to, I don't know, connect with you or anything?
I'm don't really have any. we have a YouTube for the Legion. I used to stream Armor a lot, but I haven't been able to do that lately. So nothing really. But I would like to give a nice shout out, like at the end of this, if that's okay.
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
So I just wanted to like say that whenever I'm talking about it briefly, I will say like I run or I own or I whatevered this community. But to be honest and like completely open when I'm talking to people in depth about it, like we're talking about here, I will never claim ownership of this community. I will never even say I run this community. I founded this community, and I'm very proud of founding this community, because I've always tried to push for inclusive spaces, and I mean inclusivity over everything. If you're, no matter where you're coming from, your national origin, no matter what your racial background is, class, creed, color, if you're LGBTQA plus or not, if you're neurotypical, if you're neurodiverse, whatever your background is, and that includes like veteran players and newbie players, because I mean, I don't know what everybody's experience is, but I've had experiences where I've run into groups that are exclusionary and had these people kind of look down their noses at new players, or they were exclusionary for more hateful reasons. And for me, it's so emotionally moving for me to have founded this, and then to see people come in over this time. We've been running for 3 years. We've had people come in and people go, but the people who have stuck with it have come in, and they've fallen in love with this setting I've been running for 20 years. They've fallen in love with this game we've got going, and that love has translated into a passion that just puts me at awe and moves me, because I never ever dreamed it would become what it's become and touch so many people. And I talk to people and they tell me how thankful they are. They say, this place has changed my life, and it puts me in tears. I'm fighting them now thinking about it. It puts me in tears when people tell me this, because like they're like, oh, did this help me work out problems? I met my girlfriend, my boyfriend in this. I had no confidence, and because people have boosted me, talked nice about me, I feel great. I've been able to find friends. I've made some of the best friends I've ever had here. And that's true for me too. Like, these people like have come in, and last year I came out as transgender, and it was a super daunting thing. But when I came to talk about it on the server, I was nervous, sure. But when I finally just said it and put it out there, there was this overwhelming like return of support and energy that it's just I can only say that I'm thankful. I don't own this place. It is owned by every single person who has put any scrap of effort, even if it's just making a suggestion. So if any of the players are listening to this podcast, don't think of me as the owner. I don't think of myself as the owner. I'm just the person you're not supposed to PM who founded the place. And I'm so thankful for all these people. And to name a few names, Zeft comes to mind, Goat, Calio, Big Whoop, definitely Big Whoop. I'm not going to name everybody or I'd be sitting here forever naming everybody. It's just so like hard to put it through in such a positive spirit. Tony, who is this just hardworking DM. Brian, who's always got this like such good energy, so this like crazy good worker. Pone, all the sages, anybody I've missed on that list. And it's just so nice. It's just so, and this like, you know, we're all looking at this like, you know, the world's kind of in a dark spot right now. And I hope this place has been something that a beacon of light and a beacon of hope for me. And I didn't make it that. I ran like a handful of games and turned the keys over, and what people have taken and done with it with my little nudgings here and there has just been extraordinary. And you know, I have 2 kids. They're my most proudest thing, but this is a very close second. So cool. Anyway, that's my shout out. That's what I want to say. I don't know if Storm has anything to add to that, because yeah.
No, I think you put it very well. Like you said, like every person on the server that has contributed in any sort of way, however big or small, you know who you are, and thank you for it, because without you, this place would have crumpled long ago. So it's really from the players, which is, I think, very, very nice to see.
And again, a big shout out to Laura, because we can't understate her contributions.
Oh, no, definitely not.
Yeah. Bless Laura.
All right.
Anyway,
well, cool. Well, that was awesome. Thanks again, Mira and Storm. Really appreciate your time. And thanks to everyone who stuck through and watched and listened to this whole thing. It was fascinating. And you know, stay tuned for more episodes covering other stuff. And yeah, I'll just leave it at that, because otherwise I'll ramble on with the ending. But thanks again, and yeah,
our pleasure.
Yep.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.